Welcome in to the Monday episode of the Fantasy 4-Pack. I'm your host, Ian Power, joined as always by Matt Vitale and Frankie Santiago. We're talking mid-round picks today, who our favorites are. We each prepared two players. As we've stated in the past, these aren't necessarily value picks. They are just our personal favorite picks in rounds 4 to 8. Who we're trying to target in, would you guys say probably most, if not all, of our drafts? Grab these guys whenever possible.
Yeah, these are definitely guys that even just hearing from you guys are bringing. These are guys that I have a high percentage ownership in best ball and hope to own in a lot of our redraft leagues this upcoming season.
Sure.
Yeah, and in some capacity, I own pretty much all of these guys.
Before we launch into the show, Vital, you want to show off the beer we're drinking today?
Oh, I was perusing through and I just let the can speak to me. I always went with one called Clown Shoes, a nice little company from New Hampshire. But I went with a New Hampshire IPA called Space Pony. You can just get right in those eyes and just let them stare deep into your soul. It's like I said, as the non-fancy beer drinker of the group, I give it a solid. Probably, like I said, most of these fancier beers are not usually my go-tos for a weekend, but I can cruise through this and just be fine. I think it's got a smooth taste.
I'm surprised. It's a little hoppier than you usually go for.
Yeah, I am very surprised.
Maybe that means Vitali's tastes are evolving and he is open to more beers that don't have light after them.
Nope. I'll write light on this can right now.
Well, I don't think it's that bad. I think the can is hilarious though. That horse is just that's some uncanny valley stuff right there. Like that horse is just staring daggers at you. A little bit of news before we get into it today. Jalen Hurd, San Francisco 49ers rookie, torn ACL. Not something you ever want to see for a player, especially before his career even starts. I will say, especially with Deebo Samuel being a will he, won't he play for early year, this is a bit of a bump to definitely Kittle and also Brandon Ayuk, because I think he's really their only healthy pass catcher of note at this point now. Unless you count Dante Pettis, which I don't. TJ Hawkinson, still not 100%. Doesn't really affect him at all for me. I mean, he's going low enough that I'm not going to knock him down further from his current draft position just because his ankle is still on the mend and there is still plenty of time before the season for him to get that ankle together. I think the biggest news, in my opinion, is that now Doug Peterson is also on board. He's come out and said Miles Sanders, he's the guy, and they want to increase his touches. So I think that's everyone in the Eagles organization that said this now.
Yeah, to be honest, when you said the biggest news, I thought we were going to be talking about A.J. Dillon and his quads. But yeah, this is pretty big news too. I was hoping that Sanders would stick around that mid-second round, top second round ADP, so he had a chance to slide back to me. But now it seems like if I want him for redraft, and I'm sitting in the 6 hole like I am, I'm just going to have to take him at 6 if I want him, which makes it real difficult if I'm looking at guys that have been slipping to me like Kamara, but that or I have to trade back. But like I said, I love seeing it. I love seeing a kid that's talented getting to break the Peterson curse that's been hanging over the Eagles for so long.
Yeah, shout out to Miles Sanders.
I mean, I did also want to mention the A.J. Dillon thing. I don't think it's as big news just because, well, it's physically the biggest news.
It's literally big news.
It's physically the biggest news because he is a large individual. But Miles Sanders, being what should be our locked and loaded first-round pick right now, I think is the biggest fantasy news. But yes, if anyone hasn't seen it yet, go out and look up the A.J. Dillon picture. It should strike fear into the hearts of Aaron Jones truthers because Matt LaFleur loves this kid. He wants to get him involved. Packers GM, what was his name? Packers GM Brian Gutekunst, I think I'm probably butchering that. Says he's built to last. So they want to. They're talking about this kid like they want to get him involved and get him involved heavily, I think. And if you see the pictures of him, you understand why. I mean, he looks like he could pull a train with those legs.
Yeah, I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibility that a team wants to use their second round draft pick heavily. So it's just like I said, I was banging this drum just by myself at the start of the season, and I'm just now I can hear this loud chorus behind me just being banged on by that man's thighs alone.
He is pulling his hype train.
Oh, yeah.
Little bit of other news. Nick Chubb being evaluated for a concussion. It's early enough out that this doesn't worry me at all. Even if he does have a concussion, he should be good to go by the start of the season.
Yeah, I think the only thing with that is it doesn't knock his value at all for me. I think it's just more of a tick in the injury risk, because if he gets a second one in the same year can be a little bit more debilitating. But it's something you should keep an eye on to make sure it's not anything too serious.
And then Dez was being hosted by the Ravens for a workout. Once again, don't really think this. I'm not suddenly shouting from the rooftops, draft Dez Bryant. I don't really think this matters at all. I mean, it's been 3 years since Dez has been on a football field, like actually caught passes in the NFL.
Yeah, it's not to write home about. I am even if he gets signed to a team, I am not having the highest expectations for my former number one.
So, just as you are the Cowboys truther here, if he gets picked up by the Ravens for at least a 1-year contract, are you taking a late flyer on him? One of your last picks in the draft.
I like a lot of the guys that are falling to me in later rounds, and also this depends on who at the end of August we're looking at moving up draft boards. If he's there and I don't like anybody else that's around him, and there's a guy I feel like I can wait on, probably still no.
Yeah, I mean, he's waiver fodder to me.
Yeah, the Ravens already run heavy, and they already have their premier pass catcher, so I'm not really that excited about this.
Yeah, he's someone who I'd be surprised if the Ravens signed him. And if the Ravens do sign him, I have no interest in him, because he's going to be at best like their 4th target option on a team that's a low passing volume team. So this smells like wide receiver Gronkowski to me, where it's like, if he comes back from not playing football for a few years, it's just going to be because Dez Bryant was great at one point, and somebody wants to just kick the tires and see if they can squeeze another year out of him.
Yeah, I will happily let somebody else take him.
But that's all that I saw kicking around out there for news. Before we get into the show, just as always, give us a follow on Twitter. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Hit that notification bell so that way you always know when our new content drops. Every new subscriber and new follow helps so that we can, get our news out to the masses and get you guys more consistent and higher volume fantasy news. I don't have anything else. You guys want to get into the show?
Let's blow this popsicle stand.
Go.
All right, Vitaly, why don't you take us away with your first pick here?
All right. Yeah. Let's just get right into it. A guy who I've talked to you guys about him before. And I think I'm very happy that his ADP stayed. It has risen since when we first started talking about him, and the fantasy community has warmed on him mainly due to his just plethora of work that he's going to get this year. That's Mr. David Montgomery of the Chicago Bears. Not only do I like him where he's going, I also think the opportunity to get a running back with the amount of volume he can get is rare. And the fact that you can get it in the 4th, 5th round is an absolute steal for fantasy owners, especially in a year where we're already predicting that the first round is going to be maybe 1-2 wide receivers. So you're already looking at at least 10 running backs off the board right away. So if you're somebody who wants to go running back heavy in the first 3 rounds, he's a gem to grab as your 3rd running back, in that flex position. Or if you're trying to go wide receiver heavy, he's another great guy to be your RB2. I mean, last year with how bad the Chicago offense was, he still posted, comfortable RB2 numbers. He, like I said, nothing too flashy, but that was less him, and that was more of the just putridness of that offense.
Yeah. As someone who owned Dave Montgomery last year, I can say I was not happy that he was on, especially when he was underperforming in plus matchups. I was like, come on, do something! Like, just poking it with a stick, like, do math.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, but then when you dig into the numbers, you see that of all running backs with at least 25 carries, he ranked 8th in broken tackles. I mean, this guy was breaking tackles. He was fighting for yards. It just, the Bears around him couldn't produce anything. And when you look at it, I mean, the Bears had about as worst season you can go. They went from, a 10-plus win team down to 4. And now this year, they have two situations in front of them. Either their first round pick Trubisky starts producing to that level that he was drafted at, or he continues to suck and Foles comes in and either does the same or better. So I think last year was the floor for Montgomery and is only going up from there, and you're getting him at a huge discount this year. You're not going to get it next year. So get in, supplement your team, and try and win a championship off this kid's legs.
Yeah, he's someone who I've done a complete 180 on. I hated him in May, and I mean,
Yes,
I've done a handful of best ball drafts now, and I have 38.5% ownership of him. It's actually he was somebody I was considering doing for mine today, because it's him, Mark Ingram, and Terry McLaurin are my three most owned players in best ball so far. I really like the value you're getting with him. I agree with all of that. I mean, I don't think he's gonna feel a lot like Jordan Howard, but you're getting him in like classic Jordan Howard, though, not this year's Jordan Howard. It's like, but like you're getting him in the 5th round, and if you can get a guy who's going to give you 1,000, 1,100 yards, around that range, and 5, 6, 7 touchdowns in the 5th round, not much to complain about with that. That's pretty consistent. You can build your team around that.
Yeah, I'm not particularly super sold on him. I mean, I think the value is good, but it just happens that in a lot of drafts I'm not really getting him where I'm drafting, so I'm kind of off of him. But I think that out of the probably 2 pieces to own in Chicago, it's him and Allen Robinson. That's pretty much it.
Don't sleep on Anthony Miller. I mean, he's another nice late round guy to buy in on with the talent. But I mean, as I've seen, like I said, it's one of those. He's a guy you have to really sell people on. He is the broccoli of fantasy running backs right now. Like, people already love fantasy running backs and want to load their team up, but people just want to find a reason to not like his name, like Montgomery. It's just there's not a lot of sex appeal to him and how bad the Bears were. People just want to shy away, but he has a little bit of he's like a discount Nick Chubb to me, where he, just like Nick Chubb, had a lot of work inside the 5 and just wasn't turning up opportunities. He had 18 carries within the 5, and that was 3rd most for running backs. And any other running back with those stats, we would be in on for at least for a second, maybe even like high 3rd round value. But because of how bad it was with the Bears, he's down in the 4th, 5th. So, like I said, it's just, to me, I think he's a can't miss this year. I think anyone who drafts him at his appropriate ADP, or even if you pull him like me in the top, I would say top of the 4th is probably where you're starting to hit at value, but you're not losing anything, because he would still probably be your 3rd running back.
Yeah, 4th, 5th round is where I'm comfortable with him. Frankie, you want to take us away with another 4th round running back that you like more than this guy? They share the first name too.
Yes, talking about David Johnson here.
I am talking about David Johnson.
He's listed as the RB21 with an ADP of 53, so middle 5th, top 5th. So, two stellar year last year, had just under 100 carries, 35 receptions. Didn't really do much. It's not really like what you want out of David Johnson. Like, I mean, obviously he has had the injury issues, and
sadly, fantasy owners have become accustomed to not getting what they want out of David Johnson.
Yeah, I mean, I actually, he out-touched himself 370.
Phrasing?
No, 370, 345 through the air and 4 touchdowns and 2 touchdowns. So I would argue he was a better receiver than a running back, which, I mean, being one of those pass catching backs, that can happen. But finishing running back 34, you're definitely not going to be happy with that. I mean, I'm looking at him in that 4th, 5th round, and I'm thinking, new team out there in Texas. Middle of the pack, kind of top 12 for rushing attempts per game, 4.6 yards an attempt. And they're pretty much splitting their passing and running, 60-40, just about that. So not really Baltimore, Seattle, San Francisco. But, they're a serviceable team. Additions of Brandon Cooks, Randall Cobb, DeAndre Hopkins obviously gone, but I mean, I think that they're going to be moving the ball a lot, and I think they're going to be up in games. They are a talented team, so I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility to say that even just due to like game scripting and the volume that he's going to get, the only person behind him really is Duke Johnson, that he's going to be able to not put up obviously the 2016 David Johnson numbers, but maybe hit 1,000. Maybe hit 600 or 700 through the air if he is playing at that level.
Yeah, and we've seen Duke Johnson be a non-factor on. I mean, I don't want to say non-factor because I think the fantasy community as a whole is kind of hip to the idea that Duke Johnson is a pretty good running back, but NFL teams that have him don't ever want to seem to give him a shot. So as far, he seems like he's kind of alone in that, or David Johnson seems kind of alone in that backfield too, because Duke's going to take a few passes, but you're never really worried about Duke Johnson stealing anything from this guy.
Yeah, he's never really shown that he can be that guy. So I think that just where he's going, I mean, if I can get him in the 5th round, I'm super happy about that.
Yeah, David Johnson's another guy I love in that range, just because one, he still has the talent. He's a little injury prone, but I think he went to a great team, and they already have a blueprint of how to use David Johnson to be effective, because they saw exactly when you try and change him to a between the tackles, grind it out back, it doesn't work. And as the guy who was owning David Johnson while that OC was just abusing him up the middle and not able to figure out why his running back couldn't work, I just think Bill O'Brien is not a smart man, but at the end of the day, he knows how to make an offense work. So I think between the injury proneness of this team, the amount of vacated targets, and having a quality both quarterback and some quality receivers out there to take pressure off him, I think David Johnson should be just fine, especially at that value.
I actually don't mind Bill O'Brien as a coach. I think he lacks as a GM, but as a coach, he's held on to that job for a reason. He's able to do a lot with a little, as we saw in the year when he had Ryan Mallett and who was it? Brian Hoyer and Schaub and there's that collection of garbage. He's able to still do a lot with a little. I think he's more of an offensive coordinator than a head coach, but I think that could work. He knows how to use his weapons, so I think that could bode well for David Johnson. I like him. I haven't been grabbing a lot of him, mostly because I like some of the guys that are going around him better. My big worry with David Johnson is that it's a brand new system for everyone, because Houston's had DeAndre Hopkins for as long as it feels like since the beginning of time. Houston's had DeAndre Hopkins. Obviously, that's not the case anymore. When a piece like that leaves your offense, it's there's going to be a systemic change. They can no longer just lean on one guy to carry the entire offense, and we aren't exactly sure how that's going to break down. I, like you guys, believe it's going to end up meaning more value for David Johnson, but there is a situation where they don't lean on the running backs. They're more of a spread it out offense, and David Johnson just kind of gets game scripted out. He splits passing down work with Duke Johnson, and you end up regretting taking him in the 4th.
Fair.
So why don't you wow us with who your first guy is?
I'm gonna talk about a guy that is actually going in the same range, a little bit after David Johnson, actually, who I love way more. I already name dropped him earlier in Mark Ingram, but Mark Ingram currently going as the RB22 off boards, ADP of 48.5. But even though his ADP is there, in most drafts I've done so far this year, his actual draft position has been after David Johnson. So I'm not really sure. People have to be taking him just crazy high in some drafts to juice that ADP a little bit. But Mark Ingram is someone who I've liked him in the past, obviously with Baltimore now, but I am just flabbergasted by the fact that he is getting slept on as much as he is. I mean, he's a guy who every year that he's got 200 carries or more, he's finished inside the top 10 running backs. I mean, 2019, running back 8, 2017, running back 6, 2016, running back 9. I don't have the exact fantasy finish for him in 2014, as it was further back than the Fantasy Pros fantasy finish software could calculate. But, I mean, that season he still had 964 yards and 9 touchdowns. So it wasn't a bad year. He's someone who you're never going to get 300 carries out of him, but when he gets 200 to 230, that seems like his sweet spot. He always gets 1,000. He always has high touchdown equity. He's only turning 30, so it's not like he's ancient. And the most carries he's ever had in a season is 230. So the tread on his tires is not the same as the tread on some other 30-year-old tires. He kind of reminds me a little bit of Matt Forte, where Matt Forte was productive into his 31, 32-year-old season just because he didn't run like other running backs. He was never that high volume guy, and because of that, he was able to have a longer career. I love the fact that I can get Mark Ingram in the 5th round, especially when you factor in that he's on the Ravens, who ran the ball more than everyone else in 2020, 596 times, and they don't really show any signs of moving away from that. I mean, they have a running quarterback in Lamar Miller. Even if they want to dial back the running a little bit, I mean, they could take running off the top of what they did last year and still be top 5 in running in the league, which is just fine for me. And then you also factor in Lamar Miller. As we know with running quarterbacks, they open up lanes for their running backs. They make it easier on their running backs to do what they do because you have to keep a guy in. You have to respect the fact that if Lamar sees that it's a blitz up the middle, he could just keep the ball for himself and just go around the outside. So he makes it difficult for defenses to defend him. I really like where Mark Ingram's going. I think it's almost cheating to just be able to just slot him in for another 1,000 yards and 9 touchdowns and a little bit of passing volume work, and just kind of count on him to be in that low-end RB1, high-end RB2 range with basically no draft capital going into that. I mean, he's a guy who, if he gets 200 carries, he's going to be right around, RB8 to RB12, and you're getting him at RB22.
Yeah, I really
like the draft position does not equal the fantasy production that he's shown to this point, and I just. Maybe it's because they just drafted J.K. Dobbins, or because it's 30 and he's 30 and people just don't want to draft old running backs. I don't know, but I mean, almost 600 carries last season for the Ravens as a total. There's more than enough carries to go around. Mark Ingram can get his 200, and J.K. Dobbins can be productive. Those things aren't one or the other. I think he's someone who the fantasy community is going to regret very heavily sleeping on, and whoever gets him is going to be very happy with what they get out of a 5th round running back.
Yeah, I've warmed on him a bit. I was part of the group that was definitely on the Dobbins train. Less on the Dobbins train because I wasn't interested in Dobbins either. I was just worried that they were going to eat into each other's workload a little too much. Because I did believe that the Ravens are going to try and push more for a throw, try and work the pass in a little more, so to protect their assets in J.K. Dobbins and Lamar Jackson, not Miller. As I noticed you said, is
Lamar Miller, Lamar Jackson. They're both running backs. Lamar Jackson.
Lamar Jackson.
Excuse me.
Is just. I think with him, he's just one of those guys that in that range. I think he has a little more question marks, and he's a little bit less of a sexy name. Like, people who are going for the David Johnson route are looking for that guy who was the number 1 running back once and has that a little more of a dual threat going into an opportunity that's more wide open. Whereas he's more of this ancient. I mean, they're both about the same age, but Mark Ingram feels so much older. Like, it feels like David Johnson kind of came out of nowhere, and then.
Oh, definitely. It feels like Mark Ingram is 37.
Yeah.
I just feel like it's the name. I mean...
Well, he's been second fiddle almost his entire career.
Well, it's like in a year where he was second fiddle, him and Kamara were both, top 6 running backs?
Yep.
I think they were the first people to ever do it.
Yeah, because that was 2017, if I'm not mistaken, and that was when he came in as running back 6.
I just don't understand how a guy who was the running back 8 last year is going in the 5th round.
That's been his career to this point. When he went and did the whole RB6 thing in 2017, the season before that he was the running back 9.
And
he was drafted in the 4th rounds of fantasy drafts that year. This is a light, death, taxes, and Mark Ingram in the 4th or 5th round.
Yeah, I'll take it if I can get him in the 4th or 5th. I am very happy with that because he hasn't really shown those signs of wear. I mean. He's putting up 1,000-yard seasons or almost 1,000-yard seasons. J.K. Dobbins is... I think he's going to be a factor, but I think that people are weighing way too heavily on that. J.K.
Dobbins is the future. I'm not going to just besmirch J.K. Dobbins. I think he's going to be a very productive fantasy running back in years to come. But I think people are very much overrating the impact he's going to have on that offense this year. And because of that, Mark Ingram is getting discounted past his already discounted ADP.
I would 100% agree.
Yeah, I agree completely.
Take us away with your second guy, Vitali.
Oh, guy numero dos. Dropping a little bit further back than you boys. Going all the way down to Cincinnati and Tyler Boyd. I was actually between him and AJ Green for this one. But with the news that AJ Green's already looking a little hobbled in camp.
Yeah, I think he tweaked a hammy today.
Yeah, so nothing major, but like I think it was just that kind of just most typical AJ Green way of just you're ready for him to break back out and be that, wide receiver one again because he has the talent and he has a better quarterback now than he's probably ever had. You're ready for that, but then it's just once again hammy, and then what's next? His foot, and then what's next? Like his shoulder. So I'll take the guy who has back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons and is coming out as a very safe, almost Robert Woods-like player in Tyler Boyd, who in back-to-back seasons over 100 targets last year, 148 targets. I mean, we're looking at a guy in AR-15 who's going in the top of the third. Sometimes I've seen the very back of the second, and he got 156 targets, and that's basically what's propping his value up. But yet a guy like this who now has an upgraded quarterback, granted AJ Green is back, but for how long? It's just, I think people are sleeping on him. The fact that he's going at ADP right now of 72, the wide receiver 29. So he's outside of the top wide receiver 2 conversation. And his past few years, he's been a easy wide receiver 2. And for, like I said, for somebody who's going running back heavy, he's somebody you can lock up 3 running backs with your first 4 picks, get your, maybe go Odell in the third, and then you can grab him as your wide receiver 2 as somebody to give you a nice comfortable play. Like, I don't see a reason why he doesn't continue his 1,000-yard season under Burrow, who is, as some people are saying, is one of the most NFL-ready quarterbacks they've seen in a while. And even if he has a calm season, I mean, people remember Baker when he had his, solid, almost, when he broke the rookie record for touchdowns. You were happy to own Odell and Jarvis Landry. Jarvis Landry is a great example. Jarvis Landry still had his 1,000-yard season and is comfortably a wide receiver too.
I don't believe Odell was on the team for that season. I believe he was still a Giant at that point.
I might be wrong, but anyways, Jarvis was there, and he did post in yet another 1,000-yard season. So when I look at it, people are still on the Jarvis train, though he is another guy who's getting a lot more hate than he deserves. Granted, he is still injured, and his timetable puts him at hopefully healthy for the start of the season, but if it's a nagging injury, it could last till October, so it's something you definitely want to watch out for. I'd rather just wait on some of those more injury-prone guys right there, like Jarvis, Julian Edelman, and go take a more surefire, up-and-coming guy who's going into his 5th season in Tyler Boyd. Like, it's just everything's looking like the Bengals offense is going to have an emergence this year.
Yeah, I had Tyler Boyd last year. I was definitely very happy to own him in some leagues. I mean, he's kind of like almost like a discount Calvin Ridley to me, where it's like the offense hasn't always been great, but he does put up those numbers. I mean, you're not going to see that super high touchdown volume because it's just a slower moving offense. But no, I like Boyd. I like where he's going, and I wouldn't say he's like a super value because I mean, if it's between him and taking another dart throw, I'm probably going to go with him because he's the more surefire thing.
I mean, yeah, just to kind of give you an ADP of who he's around. He is, like I said, there is some quality talent around him, to be sure. You're looking at him like Michael Gallup, who's now in a system with 3 quality wide receivers. Jarvis Landry, like I said, who is banged up. Deebo Samuel, who's a broken foot.
Brandon Cooks is going around him.
Yeah. AJ Green's above him. Cam Akers, Higbee. Like, there's definitely guys around him you can find your way to say that he should be above these guys. And like I said, he's going to the wide receiver 29. So
yeah, there's a lot of question marks there.
He should comfortably get back into the top 24 for you. So I mean, right there, he's value.
I agree, he's undervalued. I think my big thing with Tyler Boyd and where I struggle with getting him higher in the rankings is that he's just in this sort of miasma of wide receivers where they all kind of feel the same. I mean, look at the wide receivers from 18 to 30 and tell me that they all just don't kind of feel the same to you. And honestly, that it's kind of a range where after you get outside like the elites or the pseudo elites, you're kind of just taking whoever you feel like is going to have the best season. You can, personal biases are going to slot in a little bit there because they all are so similar, in my opinion, in that range. I mean, the only really different people in that range are the rookies or the sophomores now. But for the most part, all of the guys going in that range, from Robert Woods to Tyler Boyd, I mean, they all just kind of feel like these solid, should-be wide receiver twos who are just going to go out there and plug away and get you 6 or 7 catches a game for like 78 yards and sometimes a touchdown. And like, you're not mad about that. It's just someone has to be lower than the others. He's someone who I am trying to get higher in my rankings. I'm trying to figure out because I currently have him as the wide receiver 27. And it just doesn't feel right. But like I said, it's a cluster of a range to have to be ranking wide receivers in.
Yeah, and I think that is both a positive and a negative for this year. I think the positive upside of that is with all the people targeting an early running back heavy strategy, you have more of a cushion than if you flip it and you try and go wide receiver heavy, where you're going to be passing on guys like Boyd. Your running back options then become Cam Akers, who should be in a 3-headed monster.
Or 4-headed monster.
Swift, who was splitting carries with an injured Kerryon Johnson. Like, the best value there is Kareem Hunt, and he's basically, if all goes well for Chubb, then he's the backup who should be a running back too, but he's nothing sexy. I mean, he has that great upside if Chubb goes down, but then you're trying to plan for injury, which you should never do because it's so,
fluky.
I was like, fluky. It's like, it's not like it's anything you bank on. So I would rather just go heavy running back where I know I'm getting guaranteed work out of these guys, and then take the less sexy Toyota Corolla wide receivers.
Sure. Frankie, you have a very different second option, let's say a Camaro of wide receivers as opposed to the Corolla of wide receivers.
I mean,
talk to us about DK Metcalf.
With this one, I kind of was torn between him and Lockett because they're going in such similar ranges and they're really such similar players. If you look at last year, just as a sample size, because that's the only comparison that we have, while they're both playing at the same time. Look at last year, 110 targets for Lockett, 100 for Metcalf, 82 receptions to 58, 1,057 to 900, 8 to 7. So they're all pretty comparable. Lockett, I believe, is the wide receiver 19. Metcalf's the wide receiver 27, or 24 rather. Sorry. I mean, if you look at what they did last year, Lockett's got 5 years under his belt. Metcalf's a rookie, and I know that experience plays into it a little bit.
Well, he's not a rookie anymore.
Well, he was a rookie, and they put up relatively the same numbers in an offense that has. I mean, Lockett's been that guy. As much as I love AJ Brown early, I almost feel safer taking Lockett around the same range. Maybe go, I don't know, somebody else in the 3rd round. Hope Metcalf falls to me in the 4th. But I think that the way that offense runs, regardless of the fact that they did have the 3rd most rushing attempts in 2019, they have Russell Wilson, who's obviously one of the elite quarterbacks in the league. He knows how to take care of the ball, so he's not just going to be throwing it away. And that offense is going to be on the field. And he does like to throw it, maybe not as much as the Falcons or the Chiefs, but I mean, the touchdowns are there, the yards are there. I mean, like I said, this was a toss-up between Lockett and Metcalf, but I think that my personal preference is I don't really like having a lot of wide receiver ones on my team because they often draw the top.
Because you hate fantasy points, I got you.
No, because they often draw the top corners and double coverage.
I hate having Julio Jones. I want Russell Gage.
Julio Jones is the exception. I rest my case with Metcalf. I like where he's going.
Yeah, I'm buying in more so on just both of them, as you were saying, just because Seattle's run game is becoming more and more porous as they keep suffering more and more injuries, and their draft picks are not panning out, and their defense is getting worse. Like, at some point, they're going to have to stop relying on beating people with defense and running, and they're going to have to use their Hall of Fame quarterback to win with his arm. And he's got 2 quality wide receivers that should be a 1A, 1B situation.
And he's going to have Will Dissly back.
He's going to have Will Dissly. And they've got Greg Olsen. they've got the immortal one over there. So I mean, I know saying that might scare you off of both of them because I just called them both a 1, and you don't like 1s. But I think that's kind of the role they're going to play. Is I don't think one's going to supplant the other and take the top dog role. It's going to be play dependent, spot on the field dependent. And the other thing that's a very big upside for these guys, when they're close and they're in the red zone, they love to throw the ball to their receivers. They're not a team that's going to dump off to the tight end or go with, a dump off to the running back to run it in or something like that.
As New England fans know good and well.
I think we're going to see a pretty comparable split like we did last year. I think they're both going to do fine. Like I said, it was really hard to make this decision for who to go with here. I just think that there's more value with Metcalf because you can probably get him a little bit later than Lockett.
Yeah, and as the trend been, buy the new shiny thing.
He's actually going before Lockett right now. But I believe they're like neck and neck, though, as far as ADP currently. I don't have it in front of me, but
Lockett is the wide receiver 19. He is the wide receiver 24. Lockett's going at 48, and Metcalf's going at 56.
Interesting. Lockett spiked then. I'm not on either of them. And it's more of a personal stylistic choice for me than doubting their talent. I've never been a fan of Seattle wide receivers or Seattle quarterbacks. I don't want anything from that passing offense because it's too reliant on efficiency. Especially in the range that these guys are going, there are more high volume guys in this range that I can count on who have a similar talent to the wide receivers on this offense, maybe lesser quarterback, but they're going to get more passes, which means more chances to do things. It always scares me a little bit to take Tyler Lockett or Doug Baldwin back when he was their number 1, or now DK Metcalf, where they're going to be a lower volume guy. They're going to be catching 70, 80 balls tops, 100, 110 targets, and you're just hoping that they're going to be doing enough with those targets to buoy their fantasy value and to keep themselves above water. I'd rather rely on a Robert Woods or a Calvin Ridley or a Terry McLaurin, these guys who are going around them who just have a higher passing volume than Seattle, and I don't have to hope that Seattle throws, or I don't have to hope that Atlanta throws more. I don't have to hope that Washington throws more. They already do throw. Like with Seattle, there's too much hope baked into these guys that you're either hoping they're going to end up as someone who gets more targets, or you're hoping that they maintain their efficiency, which is a harder thing to maintain. It's the same thing as like running backs, where I like running backs that touch the ball a lot. I don't want to always target guys that are high efficiency guys because that's harder to replicate. So for me, I don't hate the talent. I like both of them, but I am off of them in drafts just because their value is too high, or draft capital is too high for what I have to bank on.
Yeah, see, so just for me to know now, you hate hope and you hate talent. So just good to know going forward. I can put that into my draft app when I'm trying to predict some
Hope's not a strategy, Vitaly.
Yeah, I get the stylistic choice because I typically hate Seattle running backs, except last year. Ian, why don't you take us away with the last guy here?
Oh yeah, take us away with the last guy.
Yeah,
I was just going to tread water and hope that one of you guys thought of a third guy.
I want to talk about Tyler Eifert.
Yeah, no. That'll be a show. I've mentioned him a few times tonight. Terry McLaurin is my last guy. He's someone who I've been loving this season. I mean, he had a fantastic rookie season as far as Wookiee wide receivers. As far as rookie wide receivers go, that'd be awesome if Terry McLaurin was a Wookiee. He'd be like 7-8 feet tall and no one could stop him. But I want to just open up with Terry McLaurin talking about the elephant in the room for him, and the big reason why I feel his draft stock is so low, and that's Haskins. I don't really think that fantasy owners should be terribly concerned about Haskins. I mean, last season we saw Terry put up an almost 1,000-yard season with terrible quarterback play. Like, he had a rookie Dwayne Haskins who wasn't good. He had like Colt McCoy. It was just, he had a revolving door of bad quarterbacks, and he still managed to almost put up 1,000 yards. Now he's another year older in the league. He's still the same talented receiver he was. He's already shown that he can perform with garbage. And Dwayne Haskins is now another year older. another year more experienced. Obviously, he and Terry McLaurin worked together in college because he was Terry's quarterback in college, so they already have a little bit of pre-built chemistry there. I'm not terribly worried about the Dwayne Haskins effect and him having a negative impact on Terry McLaurin. I think the negative impact's already baked into that price. I think if you give Terry McLaurin a better quarterback like Deshaun Watson or Matt Ryan, he's going for like 1,400 yards because he's just that good. I just love that Ron Rivera has compared Terry to DJ Moore. Obviously DJ Moore, Ron Rivera's coached both of them now. And DJ Moore under Rivera saw 135 targets in his second season. Once again, I don't think that Terry's going to get 135 because I don't think Dwayne Haskins is going to be throwing enough to get him to that mark. But it really wouldn't shock me if you tack 10 or 15 or 20 onto Terry's numbers and he ends up in the 115, 120 range as far as targets this year. I mean, I have him projected for 88 receptions, 1,197 yards, and 7 touchdowns. Keep in mind, this is all based off of the ADP 57 or wide receiver 25. I mean, he's a guy who he is going to be a little boomer bust, just like we saw last year. But he's a guy you can take as your third wide receiver off the board. Let's say you go running back in the first 2 rounds, and then you take, like Kenny Golladay in the third, Robert Woods in the fourth, Terry McLaurin in the fifth. You very realistically could have that wide receiver core. And I think Terry McLaurin in the 5th round, especially if you can have him as your second or third wide receiver, is the perfect spot for him because you aren't relying on him on a week in, week out basis to provide consistent numbers because that might not come with Dwayne Haskins, but you get to take advantage of the fact that when he gets his passing volume, he can blow doors and just absolutely steal you a week because of what he can do with the football. I mean, I have him in, like I said, like a lot of my best ball drafts. I'm trying to get him everywhere. I don't think there's any reason to not take Terry McLaurin at his ADP. You could sell me on giving him a 4th round ADP, and I would still buy in. I think he's just he is. I hate to use the word generational talent, but I think he's one of those guys where he's a special talent on the football field, and the only thing really holding him back is his quarterback.
Honestly, I think that the whole shitty quarterback affecting draft stock, I've never bought into that because, I mean, if you just look at like Josh Gordon, who I think is actually a pretty good comparison, he had Browns quarterbacks throwing the football, and he still led the NFL in receiving. Like, it's like what I saw from Scary Terry last year. It's
F1. Scary Terry's a terrible nickname.
Regardless, what I saw from him last year, I mean, it's kind of like the Mark Ingram thing. Like, I don't understand why he's going so late. I mean, I'll buy every bit of it.
It's because of Dwayne Haskins. It's 100% because of Dwayne Haskins.
Yeah, I just don't get it. I pretty much agree with everything you said. I do agree with the boomer bust thing too, where it's like if you don't have to rely on him, I'm much more like if I go running back, and then 2 wide receivers or a wide receiver and a tight end.
He's like a lesser Tyreek Hill.
Yeah.
He can provide you a lot of the same stuff that Tyreek Hill does, but you can get him in the 5th round instead of the 1st.
Yeah.
So I'm and have been a lot more cool on F1, Scary Terry McF1. I think it's for me. I just have that feeling of he's that guy who pops against the secondary coverage, and then he got a little bit shaky when he was clearly the top guy for Washington. I do fear the Dwayne Haskins thing, but when I really think about it, it's like we've seen poor quarterback play produce Deshaun Watson, or not, Deshaun Watson's wide receiver. But
I mean, technically, you're not.
Yeah, I was going to say
quarterback play did produce Deshaun Watson because he wouldn't have the job.
DeAndre Hopkins, DeAndre Hopkins is who I was thinking about there. DeAndre Hopkins, we've seen Megatron. Granted, Stafford's never been a bad quarterback, but
he was objectively bad back when he had Megatron because he was a lot more of a huck and chuck back in the day where he would just throw it into triple coverage.
And then,
Megatron.
Of course, the 30 for 30 himself has been a perennial bad quarterback that just can throw.
Don't you talk bad about Jameis Winston. You know I love him.
Yeah,
he just had bad eyes and bad shoulders.
Anyways, so we've seen enough evidence to see that a bad quarterback a team that loses a lot is not enough to stop a quality wide receiver with talent. I always like to see them on at least middling teams where they're going to have to fight for wins more, so they have to pass a Falcons, who have always kind of flirted with the top of the division or being the bottom. So that Matt Ryan has been a above average quarterback, and I think that has helped Julio vault himself to the status he's at. With Scary Terry, I think it's his draft stock is starting to slide into areas where there's other running backs and some other wide receivers I think are a little more safe. He's one I see that he has the chance to be great. I will fold for this season and let other people take the gamble, and then next year I'll buy in his third round ADP.
So he's someone in your mind who you like him, but you're fine with him performing on someone else's team.
Yeah, I will let somebody else take that gamble, but I mean in Dynasty,
I love him a lot in Dynasty.
In Dynasty, yeah, give him.
I mean, a lot of these guys we've talked about tonight are very interesting Dynasty guys. Obviously, we're talking only about their redraft prospects here. I love him even more in Dynasty, but
yeah, just in summation, I will let him. I don't think he's going to be a bad pick. I'm just going to let him perform on somebody else's team.
Sure, fair enough. All right, let's do a beer check. Where are you boys at? I am about a third of the way, or maybe halfway through the second beer.
I'm on one, so
this is 2 for me.
All right, I get it again. Let's go. This week I am calling out GRM himself, the fat old guy who spent a decade not putting a book out. So I assume you guys don't keep up on A Song of Ice and Fire news like I do.
I know what to say.
I have been waiting for years now for the next book to come out, and George was selected to host the 2020 Hugo Awards. It was initially supposed to be in person, but obviously moved to not in person because of COVID. And he put out a bold prediction I say bold, but it should have been a very easy to reach prediction for him that he would have the next book done, or at least close enough to done that he could give like a solid time frame on it by the Hugo Awards. Well, and if they didn't, he gave fans permission to lock him up in a cabin by a lake of acid. The place actually exists apparently. Well, it came and passed. The book obviously wasn't ready. No news on it. I mean, it's been a decade. Just put out the next book. You already saw how bad the show ended it. You can't do worse than the show. You can't. You cannot do worse than how the show ended a Game of Thrones. Just please finish the book and move on to the next one. You're like 70 years old and overweight. You're going to die before you finish the series, and then Brandon Sanderson is going to have to come in and finish it for you. I finished all of the existing books when I was still in college. It's been, and I started the series late. I mean, the first book came out in 99. He's been writing this 7-book series for over 20 years now. And each length of each book has gotten longer. It's especially frustrating because I really like the books, and it's just like, I feel like I'm never going to get the next book. I feel like I'm getting just actively trolled by a writer. I hate it so much. Please, release the next book in the series, for the love of God.
Just to clarify, I didn't hate the ending. I just hated the last season.
The ending happened in the last season.
Yeah, I hated the last 2 seasons.
Yeah, like I said,
but that's a different rant.
Yeah, as I said when the last season happened, I told you he was using the last season he workshopped his actual ending, and it was like, I didn't like it. What do I got to do?
All right, well, that'll do it for us. We're going to bring you another mock draft later this week, so tune in then as we see if Frankie can lock up the mock drafts. As I think with a win this week, you put it away.
I do. Can I go 4? Can I get the 4P with 96s?
Actually, no, I'm sorry. With how late the NFL is starting this year, we actually have 3 more mock drafts. Because the NFL is starting on like the 13th. So You have to win 2 more to lock to put the dagger in as they say to lock that up. But
it's okay. I'll 5 Pete. It's fine.
yeah, we're losing ground here quick. So tune in to see if Frankie can keep a hold on that first place spot. And as always, if you liked our takes or hated our takes, bitch about it in the comments.
Finger guns, gangster.
See you
style.
guys on Wednesday.